Good.
Okay. So we are live right now. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. This is God's Views on Political News. We're going to go ahead and get started. Now, welcome. I'm glad you're back. We've had a little technical difficulties, but I think we're up and running, and we're going to keep going each and every week. So I hope you join us each and every week at this time, and we'll have another show for you. Now, Bill, I wanted to talk to you about this morning. There's been a lot of fake news, and we hear about this all the time. I don't know about you, but I think that fake news is just getting worse and worse. The other day this is a prime example of what the fake news is like. There was a CNN analyst, and her name is Juliette Kayyem, and she worked with the national security a long time ago, I think with Governor Deval Patrick in Massachusetts. So she was on CNN, and she was on a panel, and this was live on TV and CNN. And they're talking about a different topic, and all of a sudden she says, hey, you know, I've got to let you know something. I've just found out from sources and from hearing other people talk about this that Michael Flynn, the former NSA director, is going to flip on Trump, and he's going to talk about Russia. He has a deal with the FBI, and he's going to spill the beans. So, and she's on CNN. Afterwards, she goes on Twitter and she starts talking about it on Twitter. And then, the very next day on Facebook, she says, I wanted to let you know that I don't have confirmation of this. I mean, what I was saying about Flynn, I don't know if he really has, any deal with the FBI. And I was just saying, based upon all of my experience in the national security arena, this is what I think is happening. It's just my gut feeling that this happened.
Well, first of all, it sounds like National Enquirer stuff, I mean, the Martian that had a baby with so-and-so. I'm not a news person, and so I'm just a, average guy kind of observing. But it seems to me that we're in an era where people just say things to create a news cycle. And just, they're calling it fake news, but it's all about creating some kind of chatter and news cycle. And then they can always come back and later say, well, I really didn't say it exactly that way. I didn't say this. This is what I said. And it gets their name out there, I'm sure. But what it boils down to, it's a lie. If there isn't any kind of substantiation of this, it's a lie. And, have to go ahead and insert what Scripture has to say about this kind of thing. It says in the Old and New Testament that everything has to be established by two or more witnesses. Those two witnesses have to come together and provide that information, and that information has to agree. Those two witnesses can't be giving disputing stories. Those two witnesses have to be telling the same thing for anything to be established as truth. So this is in the broader scope of things. It is just the era in which we live, where people say whatever they want to say, just to kind of get their name out there, create chatter. But biblically speaking, it is sowing lies. It's sowing discord. It's creating chaos. And when you create chaos, it's not going to end well for anybody. So, that's my perception.
Yeah, and I think, though, we've gone a step further these days. I mean, it used to, when somebody had fake news or they told a lie, like you're saying, people would correct them. And we would say, you can't do that. You can't make up things about people. That's just not right. These days, it seems like that we just are willing to be okay with it. If it fits our agenda, if it fits what a point we're trying to make, a lot of people will just overlook it and run with it, even knowing that it's fake or a lie. And there seems to have been a change in our society in that regard.
Well, I mean, that's the chaos that I speak of. Going back to the election cycle, I hate to bring it up, but it happened. this idea that Ted Cruz's father was somehow in cahoots with Lee Harvey Oswald in the assassination of JFK, and somebody just brings that up as if there was something to it. And it's insane. But we live in a day and time where, like you said, a lot of people seem to be okay with that. No one's very few people are really willing to challenge some ridiculous news story if, as you said, it fits their agenda. And politicians have said certain things about a particular situation in years past, but now it's convenient to contradict themselves because their agenda is different now. They're trying to push their own agenda, so they don't mind contradicting themselves. They admit they contradict themselves, in fact, because it's the chaos that I'm talking about. And when everybody is double-minded, and that is saying one thing here and saying another thing there, and everybody's double-minded, it makes for instability. It makes for chaos. And that seems to be the norm today, which I have to say is something that is spoken of in Scripture because we're living in those times.
Yeah, we certainly are. It's just hard to see that. And we have people too that, I see this on Periscope all the time. People are going on and they're making it's not even anymore. They don't even tell you this is my opinion and this is the way I think it is. It's almost that they are telling you now this is factual. They're not saying that, but they're acting like this information, that there's sources, and they never give you the sources and they never back them up. But they don't, and that's wrong to do that. It would be fine if they said, this is just my opinion. This is what I think. And that would be fine. But we've gone way beyond that.
Well, we now live in a day when unicorns are real, and they eat on stardust and clouds. So that's so. It's fantasies are put out there as being factual, and in particular when you've got a political agenda driving a lot of these quote unquote news people, they know that these other news people are going to have their backside. They're going to cover for them. They're going to give them shelter. So they're not going to, at least in the times in which we live right now, the political climate, no one's really going to call them on the carpet about it. I know it's kind of related, not exactly, but the whole Ted Koppel, Sean Hannity thing. Basically, Ted Koppel pontificating and saying that people like Sean Hannity and news radio and things like you and I are doing is bad for the country. Well, who made him Pope? Yeah. I mean, it seems like that he and others like him, they want to be the ones to decide what we hear, what news we get to see, and shape how we think. And, what you and I are trying to do here and what others are doing is, even if we're just ordinary people, is calling these lies out for what they are and addressing them. And this is, where I'm coming from a biblical point of view, because that's the final authority on everything.
Yeah. And I was on your mic, it keeps hitting your shirt a little bit. So it's making a clicking noise.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I also wanted to say on that Ted Koppel comment, not only that, but Ted Koppel or whoever the station is, the network, decided to edit out the part where Ted Koppel is telling Sean Hannity, people like you and people like Trump are dangerous. So now we're not only giving fake news, but we're taking news that we have that is real. And we're even editing that news so it fits our own agenda. I mean, it's just like, and that's one step removed from fake news, but it's basically the same thing. You're not giving a full account. And people may say, well, that's okay because, news networks and all that, they're always editing things, but you don't edit out pertinent information. You don't edit out information that changes the entire dialogue of something or the entire story. Unless
you have an agenda, then you do that. But, Susan, for me, it goes back to, again, Scripture, the father of lies, that is the adversary. The Messiah said that when he speaks, he lies, because there's no truth in him. He speaks of his own resources when he tells these lies. But every lie from the very beginning of time has always contained just a little measure of truth to make it sound plausible, and especially to those who are really not informed as to what the facts are. And so the news elite of today understand that the masses of people out there really don't know what the facts are. A lot of them don't care what the facts are until it touches them personally. So they've gotten away with this for a long, long time, and now it's coming to bear, where they just put out there what they want to put out there, suppress what they want to suppress, make up stuff, and then say, well, I really didn't say it that. They know that the damage is done.
Yeah, and you can see today, there's a profound hatred for this president. You have to be blind not to see that. And it seems that more so today, they're willing to just make up things. This was never under the prior administration. We didn't see this type of thing, but the media is willing to just go along with it and make up the news as they go, because again, it fits the agenda. And it's really terrible to see sort of the breakdown in society, if you will, because again, 2 years ago, this would not have been allowed. It would have been criticized heavily, and people would have called for it to stop. But that's not what we're seeing today.
Well, let's say this, that where believers are concerned, we need to know the truth. Messiah says the truth makes you free. And we need to defend that truth, and we need to proclaim the truth. And sometimes the truth is not going to be fun. Sometimes it's going to sting, and it's even going to challenge us at times. But we have to, as believers, we have to be willing to stand for the truth. Kind of borrowing from somebody I know there. We have to stand for the truth, and particularly when we realize that there is an agenda here to propagate falsehoods. Now, let me also say this. We need to also be truthful even when it's uncomfortable to us and to what we believe. If it's uncomfortable to that, we also have to be willing to share the truth in that regard as well. So, a lot of people in the news media are making up stuff about Trump. To be fair, Trump would say things when he was running during the political process. He would say things that there wasn't really any substantiation for it either. He would, just say, I'm just saying, people are saying these kinds of things. And, these people know what they're doing. So unfortunately, you and I and other hardworking people just get caught in the crossfire of all these things. And we have to really work at trying to discern what the truth really is. And, again, for me, it always comes back to how is what I'm hearing and what is being reported, how does it line up with what God says? So we have to, that's our fallback position. What does God say about these things? And whether it's coming from one side or the other, when people are just making stuff up, we know that's a lie, and we know who the father of lies are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and speaking of lies and all this, let's move on a little bit to the the healthcare debacle that we are seeing going on. I know. And it's really been bad, because you've got one side who says, and I'm on this side. We were told repeal and replace. I want repeal. Get rid of it. And replace it. What do I want it replaced with? A free market. That's right. What I want. That's right.
I'm all for repealing it. I just don't think the federal government needs to be replacing anything. They just need to get out of it.
Yeah. And we don't, again, here it is. With 8 years later, we've had Obamacare for 7 years. As Americans, what we were 8 years ago, we were more a free capitalist society, and we were lulled into this, let's kind of go into socialism, and let's do healthcare for everyone, and let's just make it what we want. The government will have their hand in it because there's a lot of things that aren't working well. So we're going to do this. And the government should never be in so many things that we see them involved in today. They shouldn't be in healthcare. They shouldn't be in marriage. They shouldn't be in other things. So why are we so willing now to accept these things? How did we get here?
Well, now, that's a long story, and it goes back several thousand years. But as far as Americans, once you give somebody something, they come to expect it. I'm probably going to step into it with some people here, but as far as Social Security, welfare, all these kinds of things, once you start giving people things like that, there's the mindset they come to expect it. And that has, and I want to make sure everybody's understanding me here, that transcends race and your background and all that kind of stuff. That's just human nature. If I'm going to get something, you're going to give me something. Okay, yeah, I'm going to take it and probably come to expect it from you. And once it's been given, and we get it, we don't want that to change. We want to continue. So there's the mindset that has been cultivated for decades now, I believe. At least back to Johnson's, Lyndon Johnson and that administration and the Great Society and all these kinds of things, and his administration tried to undertake and perpetrate. There is this mentality that the government is supposed to solve all the problems. The government is supposed to step in and resolve this issue that I have because I need this. This is a right. Healthcare is not a right, first of all.
Yeah.
That is not something that I can find in the Constitution where it says the government has the obligation to ensure that everybody has health care. So that mentality has to be broken. And quite frankly, at this point in time, I'm not really sure how that happens. But that's how we got here in a nutshell, because people just come to expect it. Going a little deeper into this, and trying to look at things biblically. Health is something that is our responsibility. That starts with me. If I'm going to eat whatever I want, whenever I want, and as much as I want to, knowing that there later on down the road are going to be consequences, then what I'm really saying, as far as the healthcare issue goes, I want to do what I want to do, and I want somebody else to cover the consequences. I want somebody else to fix the consequences once I've done everything I want to do. And I realize that does not cover everybody's situation. I realize that somebody can, lose a limb, in an accident. I realize that somebody can come down with something, some kind of an ailment that, they had no power over. I realize that there are exceptions to the rule, but let's face it. It's just like abortion. People want the government to guarantee that there's going to be an outlet for them to take care of the consequences of the choices that they have made. So my position is federal government shouldn't be involved with healthcare at all. Repeal what they've done, get out of it, turn it back over to the free market. But where, as an individual, and as particularly if I'm a believer, I have a responsibility in this as well to do everything I know to do to take care of this, what the Bible describes as a temple of the Holy Spirit. And that gets down to what I do, what I don't do, what I eat, what I don't eat, how looking after these things. It begins with me. And so for me, Susan, the whole healthcare issue is, again, people want to do what people want to do, and they want somebody else to step in and cover the consequence of it.
Yeah, and before we go on, I'm gonna your mic, if you could just kind of hold it so it doesn't.
Okay,
swings
I'm sorry. I thought I was.
Just right here, like
I'm going to set my phone on it.
Yeah, it kind of moves when your head moves, and then it hits against your shirt collar.
Sorry, I'm getting animated.
Yeah, you're getting excited about healthcare. At least somebody is, right? Well, the one thing that I'm disappointed in too is the fact that now that all of this is over for a time being, and for however long, who knows? I mean, President Trump has signed 4 more bills that will take things out of Obamacare and sort of deregulate it. So piece by piece, we are kind of getting this repeal, which is a really good thing. But what I don't like seeing happen right now is that the people on the Democrats are saying, well, you know what? We don't mind working with you at all. but we're only going to work with you if you don't repeal Obamacare. So it's kind of like, it's almost like they have us between a rock and a hard place. You know, and that maybe that's what happens when you get government involved. They're not looking at us, at the people, and see what we need and what we want. Now it's a game between the Democrats and the Republicans.
And to, of course, solidify, power, and to garner votes so that they, or whoever they are, can stay in power. So yeah, and that's why the federal government doesn't need to be involved with this and many other issues, I might add, at all. They need to get out of it. But then, but now they have that power, they're not going to surrender it willingly. They're not going to just give it back.
And Bill, what do you say to those people who say, okay, well, that's fine, Bill, because, and Susan, you can afford the insurance. Okay. But there's a small, and it's a very small portion of society that, this is why we got into this in the first place, very small portion that can't afford to pay the premiums on healthcare. They can't do that, and they deserve to have insurance too. So what do you say about that? That the government, if the government doesn't step in, then these people go without. So how fair is that?
Okay. Well, first of all, life isn't fair, period. Secondly, looking at it from a political point of view, if everything is as it should be, and it's a free market creates jobs. Jobs pay. Jobs pay enough, hopefully, to provide health insurance. So you're never going to convince me that because there are poor people out there, and by the way, the Messiah said, the poor you will have with you always. Mm-hmm. So that's never going to change, according to the creator of the universe. So, if we have a free market, then we have potential for job expansion, higher wages, people getting into the workplace, making a living, and actually being able to provide for their own health care that way through their companies and their employer, those kinds of things. Or somebody like me who's self-employed, buying my own health insurance. And by the way, with every passing day, it's getting harder and harder for me to afford my own health insurance ever since the passage of Obamacare. So the government gets involved. It hasn't made things better. It's made things much worse. Now, looking at it from a spiritual point of view, I am one of those that believe that in these kinds of situations where we have poor, where we have needy, where we have people who need these kinds of things, that's where the church, that's where the body of believers needs to get involved to help those who are in need, not to leave it to the government to take care of it so that we can build mega churches and industries and things like that. That a lot of that income that it comes into the church at large, I believe, should be delegated to things like this. And I know that there are ministries and churches that spend a great deal of money and energy doing just that. A group like Samaritan's Purse comes to mind, where they're going out into all these different places, even abroad, to help people who are in need. But my point here, Susan, is I believe that faith-based organizations, I think that's the terminology that's used today, can do a much better job at doing those things. And I believe that's the way it should be. I don't believe it should be left for the government to do. But now bringing it back to, the poor of the world, and they can't afford those kinds of things. We've had poor people in times past, before Obamacare, before this move towards socialized medicine, and this is what I'm told by people in the medical field, that they walk into a walk-in clinic, if they go into an emergency room, if they go into the hospital, no one is going to deny them care. No one's going to deny them. No one's going to turn them away. So I'm not swayed by the fact that there are going to be poor people who can't afford to pay large premiums because, again, no one's going to be denied care based on they don't have any money. I don't know that it's ever been that way. Secondly, we're always going to have poor, and that means that's where the people of God need to step up even more so and get our focus on the widow, the orphan, those people who are in need, and try to help them the best we can on an individual basis, as a family, as fellowships, as churches, as organizations. That's what we need to do. That's why we're here. And that's one of the ways, frankly, that we can be a light to those who are in darkness. I got a little creepy.
Yeah. I just think that, like you said in the beginning, we've just become so used to being handed everything, which it basically is nothing in the Bible that says that you're supposed to sit around and do nothing, that you're not supposed to just sit there and wait for a handout. I mean, I can't find anything that's biblical about that. I mean, if you're able to work, you're supposed to work from what I understand. And those people that, are getting a lot of these benefits, and I can't speak for everyone, of course, but a lot of those people, I've seen statistics, are able-bodied, but choose not to work because there's no reason to work. When you're just given something and said, here, take this, and you don't have to do anything in return for it, a lot of people will just say, okay, I'll do that. And so we've trained people, if you will, for 7 years, 8 years, 7 years under Obamacare, but to just do that, to be dependent upon the government, to look to the government for every need that you have. And now we're in this, in a debacle. I mean, we have a mess that we're trying to unwind here that's called Obamacare. And I don't know how you do that other than you just get rid of it and you start all over. Yeah, you get rid of it.
Now let's address that if you don't mind. The fact that for 7 years, Republicans have told the American public that if we get power, if it's within our power, we're going to repeal Obamacare. So now they have the House, they have the Senate, they have the White House. And what are they doing? They're not doing what they said they were going to do.
Right.
And I'm going to, get on my little soapbox where this is concerned. You had, you had a handful of conservative congressmen, and as I understand it, a handful of moderate Republican congressmen who were not going to get on board with this Republican attempt to quote unquote repeal and replace Obamacare, because it wasn't a repeal. In 2015, they brought a bill that was a full repeal of Obamacare. They sent it to his desk knowing that it was going to be vetoed. And so now they're coming up with all this other kind of stuff. It's again, it reminds me of something that we see in Scripture. Messiah told us this. He said, let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. Say what you mean what you say. Anything other than that, he says, is of the evil one, of course, and the evil one is the father of lies. So the Democratic Party, for the most part, have done exactly what they said they were going to do. Now, what they say they're going to do, politically speaking, I am almost 99% against. Almost every issue they're for, I'm against it. If they're against it, I'm probably for it.
Right.
But I do respect the fact that many of them anyway tell you exactly what they're going to do. And then they commit themselves to doing it, even if it means the detriment of the country. But they're committed to do it and they follow through on it. I can't really say that for the Republican Party at large. For years and years and years, they have said, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Given the opportunity, they don't do what they say they're going to do. And I'm left to speculate as to why. The president doesn't really use some of his political capital to put the pressure on the Republican leadership to bring to his desk a bill that fully repeals Obamacare after he is ran in part on he wants to see a repeal of the Obamacare thing. So it's frustrating, but again, if you're saying one thing and you're doing another, that is in concert with the father of lies. And so this is why you and me and others need to let our voice be heard. You said you're going to do this and we're going to hold you to it. Now, I am a little aggravated this morning that the president sees fit to want to blame these other this Freedom Caucus, the people in the Freedom Caucus in the House, who, as far as I can see, stood on principle. They stood on principle. This is not what we said we were going to do. And I applaud those men. And as far as the Democrats saying that they're okay, we'll work with Trump, as long as he's not going to repeal Obamacare, et cetera, et cetera. My question is, why would Trump want to work with the Democrats on this particular issue? Why would the Republican leadership want to work with the Democrats on this particular issue? Because what the Democrat has said they want is the antithesis of what the Republicans said they want. So it is convoluted. It's chaotic. It doesn't make any sense. And it is not going to end well for you and me as Americans.
Yeah, and I think, there's been a lot of supposition about why this way? Why did it end this way? Why did Trump support something? Why is he blaming other people? I see a couple of things. Number one, House Speaker Ryan was sort of put in charge of this. I'm not sure why. Just because he's the Speaker of the House doesn't mean that he knows anything about healthcare or how it should be run in a country. It concerned me because when he was running with Romney as vice president candidate back with Romney when he was running for president, Romney Care is what got Obamacare, what it was built upon, and that's what they looked at. So I think that Paul Ryan was pretty much in agreement with what Romney Care was all about, and of course he'd be in agreement with what Obamacare was all about if that's true. So they sat behind closed doors for all those weeks, wouldn't really talk to anybody. I've also heard that the insurance companies were involved in writing this agreement. So nothing, you're not listening to the American public. You're not out there talking to people on the street saying, what is it that you're looking for in an insurance bill? What is it that you want us to do? And I think most of them would have said, just get out of the way. We want it back the way it used to be. Now, there's some things that, again, the people that were covered, they want to continue having coverage, those small percentage of people. And also people with pre-existing conditions. So that's going to be something that, we continue to look at, I think. And I don't know how we get back to that free market. I also heard that with Paul Ryan, that he got down on one knee and begged an 80-year-old, 83, something like that, Alaskan representative to please vote for this bill. Now, if that really happened, that's pretty pathetic, And people say, well, then why would Trump go along with it and blame Ryan? I haven't, I don't know because I wasn't there for sure, but I'm thinking that President Trump thought that these people were going to give him what they should, what the American people wanted, and they were going to do a good job. It's kind of like a CEO handing it over to people, thinking they're going to get the job done. And then when it's finished, it's like, okay, great, we have this bill. Why aren't we voting for it? I had also written an article about Barletta, who was a Representative Barletta. He went to President Trump and he said, I'm not going to vote for this bill because it allows illegal immigrants to get tax credit for their health care. And that should in no way be in the bill. President Trump didn't even know that provision was in the bill.
Well, I don't know what all is in there. I read, I see what's reported, and it goes back to a statement I made earlier. We really have to work hard, you and I and others, to discern what the truth really is in this matter. But in principle, it seems very cut and dry to me. If you said we're going to repeal it, then by golly, repeal it. Don't get all convoluted with all this kind of stuff. And whether it's the president, whether it's the Speaker of the House, whether it's my congressman, who, by the way, is part of the Freedom Caucus, do what you say you're going to do. I mean, this is why a lot of those people are in office today. It's because they ran on, we want to repeal this. And I know that there are people out there who think that, well, that's what about the poor people who won't have health care otherwise? We're talking about principles here. We can't make decisions based on emotion. That applies politically, but it certainly applies when we're looking at things from a scriptural point of view. Never, ever are we told to make decisions based on our emotions, because our emotions ebb and flow, and they can't be trusted sometimes. And so that's why God gives us His word to say, this is right, this is wrong. This is the right way. This is the wrong way. This is the way that leads to life. This is the way that leads to destruction. And so when we are facing these issues as a nation, we can't base it on emotions, that somebody might get their feelings hurt, or it might not work out well for this particular person or that particular group of people. We have to make decisions based on principle. And then we go from there to address those people who are in need based on principle. And it just seems that there's so few people, among leadership anyway, who make decisions based on principle anymore.
Yeah, and I do agree with you that the Freedom Caucus, they seem to rely on principle. It's kind of like, this is what the Republicans, what conservatives say they want. This is what we're standing up for. And now some of those people are being looked at as the enemy because they dare go against President Trump. And we have to remember, no matter how much we may like President Trump, he's only human. And we have to hold him to the same principles that we would hold anyone else. So if, again, like you said, if you're promised something during a campaign and we were promised that we would repeal Obamacare, then by gosh, that's what we need to do. We need to have it repealed.
Do what you said you're going to do. And
right.
let me say this, where President Trump is concerned. You and I both know that I was not on the Trump train, and I had concerns, but now he's president. And so I am making the choice to pray for the man, that he will make righteous decisions, that he will make just decisions as it relates to his branch of the government. But I'm not going to just, go along with anything and everything he says.
Right.
And especially if it's going to contradict principle, and if it's going to contradict or come in conflict with biblical principle. Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, I think he is dead wrong to make members of the Freedom Caucus to be the bad guy in this. I saw a little blurb that Peter King, the congressman from New York, says that Trump needs to get together with the Democrats to basically, my words, eradicate the Freedom Caucus. Just, to overcome the obstacles that they are. And that's what we're up against here. And those kinds of people, if somebody who stands on principle is getting blamed for being the bad guy, that kind of helps me think that they did the right thing.
Yeah.
If the Peter Kings of the world are making them out to be the bad guy, they're probably doing something good.
Yeah, and you have to look at it no matter what, with Trump blaming everybody else, he is still the man at the top. And no matter what, you have to take responsibility for what everybody under you does, so.
What was it Harry Truman said? The buck stops here, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, again, I think either he's got to quit depending upon them, or he's got to start getting other people who can do the job that he wants done if it's different than what was done. And he needs to know what's in that bill. He really does. My understanding is on Planned Parenthood, everybody was excited about it because it was going to defund Planned Parenthood. But a closer look at the bill only defunded it for 1 year.
It was just dangling a carrot, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. And we have all of these different phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, you do this and this. We all know with the government, if you can get through phase 1, phase 2 and 3 may never happen. Or by the time we get to 2 and 3, it may be totally changed from what was previously promised. So again, it goes all the way right back to, you got to get rid of it and then kind of start over. And I don't know that they're really willing to do that, to be honest with you.
I don't think they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you can bring a bill that's a full repeal in 2015, but now you can't, come on, something's up with that. What was that in 2015? Just playing, just posturing, for the cameras. I don't trust that. I don't like that. So what the Republicans have said in phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3, if we pass this, then we promise in phase 2, this is going to happen. In phase 3, that's going to happen. How is that different from, we've got to pass the bill to see what's in it?
Exactly. There's really no difference. I mean,
I don't see any difference.
No, we're right back
and the
to
woman who said that is not one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
I would point out.
Yeah, the woman who said that is also the same woman who, after it failed, we didn't get it this last time. She went outside amongst her supporters that were standing there holding signs about, Obamacare and how much they loved it. And she decided she was going to jump up and down. And the woman literally stood there, stepped out of her shoes, and jumped up and down in happiness. I mean,
I saw it. And so just get that image in your mind. And then why in the world would a Republican congressman from New York, Peter King, or any other say that we need to work with these people on health care?
I know. Well, and then you have Elizabeth Warren, who came out and said, I'm glad it didn't pass, because for the people of Massachusetts and the people of America, this is a wonderful thing. But I'm not going to do a happy dance right now because the GOP is sort of hell bent on, rigging the system, taking the money away from all of us and our health care and everything else. And immediately, nothing to base it on, but that's her opinion. She knows that's what her supporters want to hear. That's what she gives them. And then she says that basically they're taking away money away from all of them, and it's only the rich, who are taking the money away. So all these elitists that are, in Congress. Well, she forgot she's one of them.
Yeah, right. They have that tendency.
Right. She's at the top 1%, and she made $430,000 for teaching one class at Harvard.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Well, it's absurd, I mean, it really is ridiculous. It's like, and doesn't the Bible talk about, things that were evil will be good and good will be evil? I mean, she's changing black and white, it's what she did.
Well, she's part of that culture. I mean, that's what they do. And frankly, in Isaiah 5, when it talks about the people who call evil good and good evil, a lot of believers are surprised to find out that when God said that, he was actually talking about his people. And so what I mean by that is that these people, like Elizabeth Warren and the Nancy Pelosi's, and we could go on and on and on, have been getting away with this kind of thing because God's people are allowing it to happen, not rising up. And when I say rising up, I don't mean necessarily in a political way. I mean in a spiritual way, rising up to embrace righteousness, godliness, those things that make for an abundant life. Because if we really would do that, then a lot of these issues would go away. And I am convinced of that because we're doing the same thing. It's got an R behind it right now. And I'm talking about within the context of the healthcare issue. It's got an R beside it now rather than a D, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So what is it that Einstein said? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
So it is insane. And so insane people, Elizabeth Warren, can say things that are insane and get away with it.
Yeah. And it is amazing. Well, then we have Bernie Sanders, who comes out and who says, I have a plan. Let's give everybody Medicare and let's have a one-payer system. And frankly, I think, that Obama was moving towards a one-payer system. We're still moving that way because it's unaffordable. And not only in 2015 did they pass a repeal of Obamacare, I think what they did was over the past 7 years, it was a number of 60 times that the House voted to repeal Obamacare. So 60 times. And when it came time when you could actually do it, then we so far have not been able to get it right. Well,
again, let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. And if it can't be that, then something's up. It's of the evil one. Yeah. And this is the danger of believers identifying with the political party, with the political movement first and foremost. I mean, I'm a conservative. I consider myself a conservative. I think I've told you this before. If I had my way, Ronald Reagan would still be the president.
Yeah.
But I understand that Ronald Reagan has flaws and faults too. and or had. So I can't, as a believer, identify as a conservative, a Republican, or what have you, first and foremost, because if I do that, I'm going to find myself in a position of having to defend or make excuse for things that are unscriptural, unbiblical, unrighteous, and just plain wrong. So I have to be a believer first. And if my side, and I say that tongue in cheek, if my side is doing things that are unrighteous and unbiblical, by golly, I need to speak up and say something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And reminder about the mic again. It's certain.
I'm holding it. I'm sorry.
It goes against your collar and your button on your collar.
I'm getting too. I'll just wear a t-shirt.
Get too excited. Yeah,
I know.
One of the things too that has come out recently, and we didn't hear a lot about it, and I think it's really important. I don't know if you know who Larry Klayman is, but he's the general counsel at Freedom Watch, and he came out recently and talked about a potential whistleblower name of Dennis Montgomery, and he worked for the CIA and the FBI. This kind of goes back to our fake news, deceit, all that kind of theme that we're talking about today. But he claims that he has seen all of the citizens of America, including the president, people like Justice John Roberts, high up there, prominent people. He's seen all of them be surveilled by the FBI and the CIA and all of us. He claims to have 600 million pages of information and 47 hard drives, which prove that Trump, the Trump administration, other prominent people, and all of us have been surveilled upon. And yet, supposedly, according to Klayman, who again is the general counsel of Freedom Watch and this guy's attorney, when they got the information, they went to the FBI and they said, "Hey, we've got all of this information. Something needs to be done about it." Supposedly, they sat down, had a closed-door private meeting, Dennis Montgomery did, with the FBI. And that would mean that, so now James Comey's office has this information. Klayman himself says that he went to Senator Devin Nunes of California, who is one of the co-chairs of the House Intelligence Committee, told him about this information. But he didn't actually have a person-to-person visit with Nunes, but his, like the staff attorneys in the office, because Nunes said he was too busy. So we have all of this happening, and yet it's like we're chasing this false narrative of, oh, come on now, President Trump. No one got surveilled. That Obama didn't wiretap you, which may be true. I mean, if this is true, the FBI and the CIA did it without Obama having to do it. But where do we come out of this rabbit hole that we're in? It's kind of like Alice in Wonderland. I mean, we've got one side over here, spinning little dishes on a stick over here, the other side doing the same thing and trying to keep them going at the same time, and it's all going to come crashing down. I mean, this is craziness.
Well, the only solution to have true political reform, not just on the surface, but down deep, where these kinds of things are happening, this, what do they call it? Shadow government, people kind of operating outside the parameters of what they legally are supposed to be doing. The only way you're going to uproot that and have true reform is to have spiritual reform.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen politically. It's not going to happen with the new administration. Those people are not just all of a sudden overnight going to get honest. It's not going to happen. So without true spiritual reform, we're going to continue in this until everything just implodes. Now, I don't remember if we've talked about this before or not, but, several weeks ago, I wrote an article about, I believe that perhaps we have received a reprieve in this country. And I still believe that the opportunity is there for this nation to turn around, because a lot of people are convinced that the president was elected because people got on their knees and started praying for God to intervene. I don't have any problem believing that at all. But if we have been given a reprieve, for what purpose? It's not to go back and do the same thing over again. It's not to allow these political issues to be the most important thing to us, because those political issues are not going away until we, as his people in this country, address the spiritual issues. So in answer to your question, where does this go? In my view, it gets worse unless we as people who believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob continue on our knees in prayer and repentance and calling upon heaven. We have a tendency that once the crisis has passed to go back to our same old deal. And I fear, Susan, that that's probably what's happening. So that's not the answer people want, but that's scripturally how I see it. These things that are so deeply embedded in our society and in political culture and shadow government and all those things, there is only one who can uproot it. And the only thing that motivates him to do so is when his people have humbled themselves and continue in that humble attitude.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Even Israel prayed that Donald Trump would be elected president. So they were praying right along with us. And the fact that we've talked about this, I think, before in a lot of other shows that I've been on as well, that the fact that California, didn't get in the way, that so many people even in California went out and voted for Donald Trump, and that this country was able to elect him when it looked like it was in the bag, for the Democrats to win, even though, all the things that were happening politically with Hillary that weren't so good. And everybody Hillary assumed she was going to win. Everybody assumed that Hillary was going to win. And I do think we were given a reprieve. I really do. But at the same time, the way that I see it, we are speeding even faster towards the end times, in the end times, because, I see so much that's happening in the Middle East that I don't necessarily know. Some of it was brought about by Trump becoming president, him getting more serious about what we're going to do in Syria, handling things differently. It's making a lot of countries unhappy, Iran being one of them.
Well, in terms of making Iran unhappy, I mean, but as far as these things that we're talking about, the reprieve and things like that, here's something we need to keep in mind. King Hezekiah was given a reprieve when he appealed to God for mercy, and God was merciful, and he added 15 years to his life. But what did he do with that time that he'd been given? And I can tell you what he didn't do. He did not pay attention to his son, Manasseh. He did not invest spiritually in his life, because as soon as Hezekiah died and Manasseh became king, he undid everything good that his father had done and reverted back to the way things were, and even worse. And that's what we have to look forward to if we do not take advantage, spiritually speaking, of this opportunity that God has given us, and to continue to pray. I disagree with some things that Trump is saying and doing right now, but I'm going to double down on my prayer that God will truly use this man to bring about righteousness and justice, and that he would surround him with people who would be a benefit to him to that end. And not necessarily people who say, hey, you need to make a crap list of everybody who's, not going to do what you want them to do.
Well, and the reason I bring up with Iran and getting mad, I don't care if Iran is mad at us or not. My point on that was Iran, things are heating up in Iran and in Syria, and that is going to affect Israel, and whether or not that happens when they go in there and Damascus is a ruinous heap or whatever. It has sped things along, and I think we are, and that's my point with Trump. I think getting him in. That's Siri talking to me. Okay. Getting him in has made it sped a lot of that up, because the countries are just saying, maybe they're just moving faster because they know Trump kind of means more of what he says he's going to do than let's say Obama did.
Well, I certainly believe that, and certainly hope so, that he is going to be someone who does what he says he's going to do. And as it relates to Israel, that's a great thing. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, Israel needs to understand that the only one that he really can trust is the God of Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's the one who orchestrates things. He raises up kings. He brings down empires. And if it's God's purpose to have Donald Trump as the president of the U.S. at this very crucial time when Iran is threatening the way they are, and the things that are going on in Syria, and the things that will continue to go on in that region, if that serves God's purposes, then all the more reason for you and I to pray for him, to pray for those around him, that they would make just decisions. And quite frankly, if that is being hastened, these things that are going on in the Middle East, all the more reason to put to bed some of these domestic issues now before things going on elsewhere take all of his time and attention.
Well, and it is amazing too, and we all know this. We're not getting all the news that's going on in the Middle East, and we're not hearing that Israel is saying to Syria, if you attack us like you did the other day when we blew up a convoy that was trying to get weapons to Hezbollah, and then when Israel did that, Syria didn't like that, and they came after Israel and actually attacked in Israel. And they're like, "Hey, you do that again, we will not hesitate to destroy your weapon system." Do we hear about that in the United States? No.
Not a lot, because, we're focused on healthcare, we're focused on immigration, we're focused on this, that, and the other. We have a tendency not to look to the future, frankly, as it relates to what's going on elsewhere. And that is, by the way, that is a problem that Hezekiah had, not looking to the future. So all these things you're talking about, as far as I'm concerned, it just amplifies my argument that if we've been given a reprieve, that reprieve is not to serve our own purposes, but to serve God's. And the only way we're going to know what his purposes are is to seek his face. So we really need to take advantage of this chance that we've been given.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't know how many people continue to do this, but it would do us all a service in this country to pray every day for the protection of Donald Trump, the vice president, and everybody else in this administration. That not only would they be protected, but they would follow what God has for them to do, what the principles in the Bible are. Not blaming other people, but they're human beings, and we have to also remember that as well. We have to cut them
some slack sometimes.
Yeah,
but because God cuts us some slack all the time.
Yeah,
but at the same time, not just lay down and wink at things that are not right. And so we need to redouble our efforts to pray for this administration, because this, as a nation, this might be our last chance.
Yeah. And again, it's what we've been talking about. Even if it's unpopular for you to take that stance, whatever your stance is, if it's biblically based, you still should take that stance. You might not be liked by people on the left or the right, but ultimately you don't answer to them. You answer to God, and that's who you have to please. So what if you're unpopular? So what if people hate you? If you're following God's will and God's principles, sometimes that's the way it is, right?
Well, let me put a little finer point on that. Messiah said, if you follow him, people will hate you. You can count on it.
Yeah.
So we have to make a decision who we're going to follow.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Bill, the hour just flew by. I thank you so much for being here. I thank everybody for being here today. We will be back again next week. God's Views on Political News is always going to be seen on the God's Views on Political News page on Facebook. And I hope you will join us. Have a lot of people that please tell them about this. We're going to have this on different pages. Please feel free to share it with anybody and everybody. So until next week, Bill, thank you so much. And we'll see everybody again next week. You're welcome. Take care.